Saurabh, Suri, Managing Partner, Ritesh Agarwal, Director Asia Pacific at CerraCap Ventures are now joining us live from our Delhi studio. Good morning, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to have you in our studio. Saurabh, let me come to you first. Can you just describe about the fund, CerraCap Ventures? What's the size? What sort of businesses do you look at? And is there enough opportunity still available in the startup pack in India?
Absolutely. By the way, a very good morning to you, Pankaj. So CerraCap Ventures is an early stage VC fund, and we're about, into our second fund at about $150 million in size. And we have a global purview in terms of technology startups that we focus on in very specific areas. And we essentially focus on helping startups, or what we call value beyond capital, which is to say the best companies or the best startups in the world don't just need money, but they need the right kind of guidance, the right kind of sales directly into the market, and the right kind of scale and the ecosystem to drive it. So that's our primary focus. And what we've done over the past few years now is focus on startups in key tech hubs such as India, Israel, UK, and the US, looking at the best technology startups in pretty much the B2B sector and taking them to market and helping them grow.
Right. Ritesh, can you just talk about the booming entrepreneurship in India, especially relating to the startup? Is that start of something which may lead to further growth going ahead?
Yes, absolutely. So as we see, in the Indian space specifically, there's a lot of early stage startups are coming in. And that is helping not only the Indian ecosystem, but now the overall the presence of Indian startups or Indian companies in the global ecosystem. So what we are seeing is that as an investor, it is what we should do. We should provide them not only the local scale-up opportunities, but also provide them the exposure to the global ecosystem.
Sure. And
right,
sorry, Pankaj, I was just going to add, if you look at it, India today ranks third in terms of the number of startups being produced every year globally, just behind the US and UK. And we're attracting probably within India the maximum amount of FDI in this space. And 8 out of the 10 private equity and venture capital firms in India investing in startups today are actually foreign ones. So a huge amount of investment coming in, huge amount of startups, bringing up. And I think it also has to do, to a large extent, with a shift in mindset, where we, at least in the technology space, we had companies that were developing software for companies in the US, which would then exit and get these huge valuations at exit, where these people and these amazing entrepreneurs have woken up and said, wait a minute, let's stop building products and start building companies. And that, I think, has provided that right impetus to the whole startup environment in India.
Right. Saurabh, just focusing in on that, you think now the focus will shift from branding to essentially distribution, or how easy the reach is led by this startup? So something like a HUL, which was constantly investing into branding, now after say about 5 years, it will be about distribution, and which company has better distribution?
Definitely. I think the answer lies in the question, and I love questions where the answer is right in them. You're absolutely right. I mean, the focus, if you look at, on the one hand, the global economic conditions we have today, with startups now looking more towards sustainability, and on the other hand, the idea going beyond just branding. Although branding is a huge part of reach and distribution, as you called it, I think the focus is going on that, and it's going more about startups not just focusing internally, but having the ability to look at distribution and look at that global reach, which really I see as the next evolution rather than revolution, but the next evolution of the startup ecosystem here.
Right. Ritesh, we have been talking about how venture capitalists, PE funds are actually helping these companies for about 2 to 3 years. Since 2009, that's since the time we've seen the global financial crisis, the focus has essentially been of markets of less capex company with high free cash flow. And you think that's the reason why PEs and venture capitalists are coming into the startup space, because they are currently loss making, but they need that help coming in terms of funding, which probably equity markets right now are not in a position to give them?
Yes, that's true. Right now, that is where we see that a lot of values are there. But I want to bring one topic that, you know what, we all are seeing that there's a lot of, there's a global correction going on. And we also see that the market space, even in India, is also making a correction, which is basically for late-end valuation, or late-end companies, it's a correction. But for new startups, it might be a good thing for them to happening. And if you see, with these corrections and these multiples coming down, now the companies will focus more on sustainability rather than focusing on hype or growth or valuation. So that's we feel that that's where the market is shifting.
Right. Saurabh, just a word on the valuations of these startup. You think it's slightly high, and any investor into this space will need to be very, very selective?
Well, that's a very interesting question, because frankly, if you ask any investor anywhere in the world, are valuations high, the automatic answer is yes. But looking at it from an Indian environment, what we saw about 2 years ago is going to be very different from what we see this year and moving forward. So in the past 2 years, we've seen with a high amount of FDI and the high availability of capital in the tech space, the valuations were quite high. In fact, in many cases, they were unsustainable valuations. And that's why we also saw the high loss ratio coming in the tech environment. With the current economic crisis there is, with the availability of capital, and most importantly, the maturity of the angel investors in India as well, we are seeing that correction coming into the early stage valuations. And the last aspect I'd say, which is also a parameter, is the corrections that we're seeing globally in the late stage market. That's now had that trickle down effect with the early stage valuations getting a little bit more mature, a little bit more realistic, as opposed to, you know, three guys in a boat walking in and says, hello, we're so and so and worth 50 million.
Right. Ritesh, as far as, you know, till now, the focus was on reach, was on sales. Most of the deals we saw happened on sales. Now you think the focus would come in on profitability, because someday, you know, these companies would have to deliver. That's what investors are investing for.
Absolutely, absolutely. See, again, as an investor, you have to always focus on the fundamentals. And fundamentals is all about profit. So no matter what you do, if your profits are not coming in, if your revenue, if you're not generating the revenue, one fine day you will get a wake-up call, and at that time you have to look at the fundamentals. And that's what we always discuss among ourselves, that okay, this company or that particular company around the world might have a good valuation, but if the profit is not coming, if the revenue is not coming, then you know what, it's a matter of time before they have a huge problem.
And actually, Pankaj, if I may chime in, let me add a little bit of whimsy to this as well. Absolutely, the way things are moving, profitability and that path to profitability is going to be critical. But the one, I'd say, aspect I'll add to all the entrepreneurs out there is there has to be the idealism within that as well. And that really depends on the stage of your startup and company. So if you're in the early stages, focus on innovation, focus on disruption. And once you've got that piece, and then you go into, let's say, the late early stage or the early mid stage, if I can confuse your viewers. But once you move into that mid stage, that's when you got to focus on sustainability and profitability. If you do that from day one, you might miss out on the angle of innovation and disruption, which is critical in building the large companies and the large global companies out there.
Right. So investors should be supporting the entrepreneurship trend that we have seen so far?
Absolutely. Especially from, if you look at the Indian context, I'd say the support that the investors should bring in is on three phases. First of all, it's value beyond capital. Right, so investors should not just be providing capital, which is obviously very important to these companies, but look at value beyond that. Look at helping guide these companies, create a global ecosystem around the entire space, so that Indian companies can actually sell and distribute within a global environment, which is something that I believe is the next tectonic shift that we have to do and has to be enabled by investors. So that support, A, early stage support where you drive these companies to innovate and disrupt and then guide them towards profitability, and B, provide them that global market space to really expand.
Right. Saurabh, Ritesh, what would be one piece of advice that you would want to give to early entrepreneurs?
So, if you don't mind, I look at three stages of advice, right? Let's call it the Holy Trinity. Number one, focus on building companies, not just products. And that requires a huge mindset and a mindset shift, because in India, we've often been accused of having a service mindset, but go beyond that. Focus on building the companies. Second, constantly involve and reinvent not just your company, but yourself as well. Like I said, early stage, focus on innovation, then evolve yourself, focus on sustainability. And the third one is, if you follow 1 and 2, do not listen to anything else I say.
Right. Ritesh, any piece of advice that you would have, or similar to Saurabh?
Very similar to Saurabh, but my other advice is, as I mentioned, is that focus on fundamentals also. At some point of time, once you cross the first 2 stage, the only thing you should look at the fundamentals. If the profit is not coming in, if the revenue is not coming in, if you're not expanding, if you're not going beyond the borders, you will have a problem. And that is where new age investors like us, we come in, we provide not only the value guided advice, but also the scale and the opportunity to sell the products around the world, because we have the ecosystem, we have the capability to take Indian companies and make them a global companies.
Saurabh and Ritesh, thank you so much for taking out time for us. It has been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Pankaj. Thanks a lot. Thank you.